business interruptions, warranty claims, sub-failures. This is the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night. These risks can hit you hard. And often traditional insurance falls short. So how do you protect your company from the unpredictable? That's where the 831B plan comes in. Think of it like a 401k for your business, letting you set aside tax-deferred dollars to cover underinsured or uninsured risks, whether it's a lawsuit, supply chain disruption, or that massive warranty issue that you never saw coming. An 831B can help you to self-insure and take control. But here's the kicker. They aren't for everyone. The IRS has been cracking down on captives that don't meet their criteria, and setting one up without understanding the rules could land you in serious trouble. Not only that, but if your business doesn't have enough risk, or if you're just chasing a tax break, the 831B is more of a headache than a help. And that's why I'm sitting down today with Van Carlson, founder and CEO of SRA 831B Admin. That's quite a company name. He has 25 years of experience. He's seen it all, and he's here to walk us through how construction companies can use the 831B the right way to avoid the red flags that could trigger an IRS audit. And we'll also dig into when the situations occur that cause an 831B to not be the best fit. So if you're looking for practical, no BS ways to protect your business, this episode is for you. Let's dive right in.
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership.
Van, welcome to Construction Genius.
Yeah, thanks for having me on your podcast, sir. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Absolutely. I'm having you on because you're an expert in a particular risk management strategy, the 831B plan. And I'd just like to kick right into it and tell us a little bit about the 831B and how it can benefit a business.
Yeah, so an 831B is this part of the tax code that allows business owners to manage their risks more effectively and efficiently when it comes to self-insuring risk, or with traditional insurances having gaps of insurance, recognizing that as we call it an unfunded liability on their books. And it comes down to risk financing. Risk financing is typically done through paying a premium to a traditional insurance carrier, getting a policy for that. I've transferred that risk, and I finance that risk too, by the way, through premiums. A lot of times you do retain a lot of risk, unfortunately. Well, I know we're going to dive into that a little bit and kind of bring a lot of construction owners out there understand there are self-insuring risk in a lot of ways. And so really this is an incentive for them to put away expenses through the operating company, put them into a bucket, which it is the 831B plan has to feel and look like an insurance company. And it is also a C Corp. And so we're an administrator of those plans. That's what SRA 831 admin does. No different than a 401k administers your 401k plan. We just make sure you got to be compliant on it. So it's a big advantage for business owners. And it's, we really appreciate being on your platform to bring awareness to it.
So tell me, what types of construction-specific risks are best suited for an 831B plan, and when might traditional insurance be a better option?
Yeah. So, here's the thing I tell clients all the time. We do macrocaptives. Macrocaptives are where you're replacing your traditional insurance with captives, but typically you're north of $400,000 of traditional insurance premiums between your commercial auto, your general liability, your excess risk policy, your umbrella, and then also property. So we do deal with a lot of construction owners out there. I mean, you're seeing big rate increases now. We're saying it all the time. You're paying more and getting less when it comes to your traditional insurance. And so I think a lot of times today, what we're really looking at right now, though, is like contractors default. Supply chain risk has become an issue over the last couple of years due to COVID, obviously. You've got deductible reimbursement being set up. A lot of business owners, lots of construction guys, in order to offset their increase in their premiums, are taking on more first dollar loss. And those are unfunded liabilities on their books, and they're just hoping it doesn't happen. And, for us, it's about, managing that risk, mitigating those risks, and making it more appetizing to take that risk, if that makes sense.
So explain it to me like I'm a fifth grader. Exactly what does an 831B do for a construction company?
Yeah. So an 831B allows you to put the first $2.8 million you put into it.
$2.8 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously, and we'll kind of get into the rules of that, but
Yeah.
that's the max you can put into that 831B plan and still elect an 831B. And the 831B allows you under the tax code not to recognize that as taxable income inside that C Corp. So now you're able to build up a surplus and reserves on a tax deferred basis that allows you to just take on the risk and fund the risk more appropriately, So let's say you didn't do anything. Let's just say you had these unfunded liabilities on your books. You're just going to use cash flow. When it happens, you're just pulling money out of cash flow to make good on it, right?
Right.
And that puts the business at risk. Now you got an unexpected expense, and some of these expenses can be substantially larger than, you look at construction defect today or rework. You look at a paving company, they put down the paving wrong, or the paving from the factory, from the yard sand didn't come out right, and now they got to pull all that back up and rework it. Those are huge expenses that they just eat into the profits of the profits of the project or the cash flow of business. And realistically, that's what we allow business owners to do. And so it's a tax deferred way to build up the risk you're taking on. And that just gives you more dollars to work with and keeps it out of your cash flow. When you talk about peaks and valleys of businesses, right? Cycles and all that kind of stuff. If you're having a good year, just to take a little bit off the top and park it into one of these vehicles, not only is it good risk management, it's just good business. And that's what we're here to explain to business owners. When you are doing well, you got to maximize those good years, right? And the way you do that is utilizing a tool like 831B, because we all know things happen. Things come up unexpected all the time in the world of business. Doesn't matter what business you're. And by the way, no insurance companies out there is bulletproof. And actually, if anything, there's more exclusions being put into these policies today than there are 5 years ago.
So in other words, the 831B does not replace my insurance policy. It's a supplement to my insurance policy.
It should be an enhancement.
Enhancement. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, from my understanding, they're called microcaptives. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a term the IRS has put on them. There's a macro to micro. Micros is smaller. Macros, macros are like Microsoft. Microsoft owns a ton of their own insurance companies. So does UPS. Any major publicly traded company owns all their own insurance companies.
But in construction, though, if I'm involved, because I have clients who are involved in what I'm assuming here is a macro captive where all of their insurance needs are taken care of through that macro captive. The 831B is not that.
That's correct.
Okay.
We have a lot of those clients that have those products, and we use the 831B to recognize. By the way, they're taking on a lot of first dollar risk when you go into a macro captive like that. I mean, typically you've had the first 250,000, sometimes as much as $1 million at risk that's on you to make good before your captive even triggers coverage.
Yeah.
And so we'll fund for that as well. And so we work with a lot of large construction companies all over the country. And like I said, we're just I wouldn't say a supplement, but it just enhances their program, especially with captives, because you got to worry about frequencies. When you're in a captive program, like what you just described, you got to worry about, you don't want to get kicked out. And unfortunately, once you're in there, you got great pricing. It puts you at a great competitive edge over your competitors that aren't doing it, because why? Your costs, your premiums are far less than them, and you want to stay there. And so one of the ways that we do that is we supplement it to a B. So sometimes they'll say, you know what, I'm not going to turn a claim in on a vehicle if it's less than $25,000 in damage. I'm just not going to do it. So I'm self-insuring that risk. Let's fund that up to where that makes it more palatable for you to take that risk on.
So the 831B is not only for companies that have traditional insurance, but that you can also use it if you do have a captive insurance. It's just sort of a mini captive, even if you have the macro captive.
Absolutely. We do it quite often.
Okay. So, in the last few years, the IRS has scrutinized these plans more closely. So how can construction companies ensure their captives are compliant and not seen as a tax shelter?
Yeah, I think, we're risk managers. We hire the CPAs and attorneys. And one of the things I tell business owners all the time is like, well, who's promoting this to you? Is it it's one thing for your CPA to say, hey, you need to look into this as a risk management tool that has tax advantages to it. It's another thing when your CPA is trying to get you to do it, or the CPA is promoting it, or a state tax attorney is trying to promote it to you. I think that's where the motivation. I tell business owners all the time, if you're here to do it as a risk management that has tax advantages, great. But if you're using it for tax advantages and the risk management second, then maybe you should be worried, because and let's be honest, the thing's been hijacked by state tax attorneys. They've been promoting this as an estate tax tool for very, very wealthy clients, obviously. And that's what's really brought the pressure from the IRS. We as Americans, we do what we do. I tell people all the time, the Tea Party was a real thing. We don't like paying taxes, right? I mean, we take a lot of risks to do what we do and so forth. And so when you have the wrong promoters out there promoting it more as a tax strategy over risk management, I think that's where it becomes problematic. And that's where the IRS is going to stare at you. And, we're just not having those conversations today, quite honestly. I mean, this code started in 1986, the Tax Reform Act, very similar to the environment we're in today with high rate increases and low. And there's a magazine, Time Magazine has an article that was written in March of 26 of 86. Saying, wake up, America, you're welcome. So something like cancel, your insurance has been canceled. And we're very similar to that market today. Hardening of the market, exclusions are going up, and business owners are just worried about keeping their insurance in place right now.
Right. So what are some common mistakes companies make when they're setting up an 831B, especially in the construction industry?
I think ownership of it has to be addressed up front. We like the operating company to own the vehicle itself, or we mimic the ownership of the operating company. We don't get cute with that, having the irrevocable trust or trying to hide, who owns this thing, right? I mean, we're very black and white on that. SRA 31B admin is certainly. That's one of the things. Ownership is key. The next one would be what's the motivation? Kind of getting back to what we said earlier.
Yeah.
I think today it's so different after COVID leading up to that. We're the largest manager of 831B plan administrator in the country, and we plan on doubling it over the next 3 years. And it's not because of taxes. It's honestly because of the risk management, what's going on in the market. Whether you believe in climate or not, it's just we're living in areas that maybe we weren't living in so much before.
Right.
But we're going to constantly have more and more climate issues. We're in a more global economy, which means supply chain risk at times are going to be stretched.
Right.
We're absolutely in a political environment where business owners, construction owners got a ton of political risk today. And, with the EPA and everything that goes on in the world out there. And when you look at their policies, it's just not covering everything they needed to do. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah. So how long should a company plan to keep their captive running for it to be financially viable, and specifically the 831B? And what's the risk of using it as a short-term strategy?
Well, we do a lot of short-term strategies with it too, just so you know. Here's the thing. Great question. I think from my perspective, it comes down to fees. One of the things I didn't like, I got this in 08 when it was due to the Great Recession.
Yeah.
I was selling traditional insurance going up to 08. And unfortunately, a lot of my clients were construction companies. Everybody was killing it, right? In 08.
Right. Yep.
And, unfortunately, I saw those guys know one thing. In the fourth quarter, they would call me and say, hey, Van, what's it going to cost to insure 2 more trucks and another skid steer? Because my CPA says, taxes this year, and I'm going to take advantage of accelerated depreciation. And all they did was bet next year was going to be better than this year because they just leveraged it. And, and that's really when I got into this program. I knew about it, but I wasn't interested in it until something like that happened. And then I saw these pillars of communities, people that supported the baseball teams, the subcontractor guys out there go out of business, unfortunately, because all they knew was leverage.
So then what you're saying then is this is like an alternative to you have some extra cash, you're wondering what to do with it. And this is an alternative to going out and buying another piece of equipment to make yourself feel better about your tax bill at the end of the year.
Absolutely. It's the best way to mitigate your risk. I mean, you're not taking on more risk doing it that way, which is, again, form of insanity. Every year is not going to be better than the previous year, as we know.
Right. So how long should a company plan to keep their captive running it for it to be financially viable?
Like I said, the fees are a big one. I think our clients, based on our fee structures, our clients win in the first year based on fees. If you just took over ordinary, hey, if I kept it in my company and retained earnings, paid taxes on it because it's a pass-through at S Corp, LLC or whatever, or do I just do this program, creating the expense and drop it into this bucket? What's that performer look like? And we send that out to business owners to review themselves. We don't evaluate their tax liability and that kind of stuff. That's on them and their CPAs and their other trusted advisors to look at. We're their risk management, managing their 831B plan. So I would say that. The other thing is when you sell a business, the warranties, we haven't even hit on that. Today, the warranties that business owners have to give that's one of the largest unfunded liabilities on their books.
Yep.
Is their warranties.
Yeah.
You got to realize the profit today, but you book the liability into the future.
Yep.
Where's that money going to come from when you got to pull back? And the reality is just to take a little bit of that profit and park it off to that side into an 831B where you can take a deduction and still retain the money to be able to offset that exposure, that liability. Again, I can't emphasize enough. That is the way you stabilize your business, regardless of it's good time or bad times.
So what is the maximum size that an 831B should get to in terms of, is there a cap in terms of how much money you can put into it?
Yeah, great question. We do solvency testing. So by year 3 or 5, you go into a solvency testing with our administrators. And it's a methodology we use that says, hey, listen, if you're going to keep funding, you're not having claims. And keep in mind, there's pooled claims here too, that you're going to be pooled with other other construction and other industries for that matter, depending on the types of risk you're in. So we're creating the pools. You got to create a distribution of risk. That's one of the things that the IRS has challenged a lot of these on, is there is no distribution of risk. So if you're not leveraging the law of large numbers, how can you call yourself an insurance company?
Right.
And because we're the largest manager of these plans, our pools are like 700-800 participants in these pools, if not larger. And so we're able to distribute the risk amongst many different operating companies. But that being said, when it comes to the solvency, is if these claims aren't occurring, we're going to ask you to take a distribution out of your C Corp as a shareholder, or we're going to have to lower your contributions down, or we got to find additional risk you're qualified to have.
Right.
These things are just not going to be, we're just not going to allow you to keep piling money into these things without having claims.
Yeah, that's interesting. What level of administrative support or expertise should a construction company have before considering an 831B?
I think they got to do a lot of due diligence. I think they try to really understand who they're getting, what your sign-off administrator. I think you got to pull in your trusted advisors. I have battles all the time with CPAs. I tell business owners, in today's world, I call it being advocacy. I'm an advocate for my own health.
Right.
My doctors, I have 2 doctors. I love them to death, but to be honest with you, they see 1,500 people a month. I got to take control of my health, and no different than I got to take control of the health of my company. I got to be an advocate for me. I got to be an advocate for my business owner. And you also got to be an advocate when it comes to paying taxes.
Right.
And so, but still, you got to bring your CPA in. You don't want to do this blindly. And you got to, we educate CPAs all the time. But, realistically, they're afraid because they see it on the IRS is watching it. But from our standpoint, we've gone through our 6,700 promoter audit. It's been dropped by the IRS. SRAs, we've been reviewed. They're never going to bless us, obviously, because that's not something the IRS would ever do, because they don't like this thing, right? It's advantage to the taxpayer, and their job is to collect as much tax from it as possible. So there's a direct conflict with that, right? So at the same time, I think that's how long you've been doing this, and all those things, I think, is really key to your operation. I mean, I think, you just got to look back in the history. You got to look at COVID. Did PPP, did you have to rely on the PPP or ERC to keep your business afloat?
Yeah, right.
This thing is the PPP plan and the ERC. I mean, we're lobbying Congress all the time on this. We're getting a lot of traction out there with both sides of the aisle. Like, what are we going to do next time?
Right.
Let's take the hair off this thing, make it a normal business practice, no different than the 401k. Okay, if you don't like something, change it, make it more, whatever you got to do. But business owners that are profitable companies should be able to put away tax-deferred dollars to take care of their own company down the road instead of relying on the government, like unfortunately due to COVID-19.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Hey, this is Eric, and quick break to talk about my book, Construction Genius. It's such a great book. You should go get it. Check out all the reviews on Amazon, by the way. We got a bunch of 5-star reviews up there. You're going to learn about time management, high performance, communication, running great meetings, clearly defining the purpose, personality, plan, and top priority for your business, diving into sales and marketing, particularly about selling. People like to buy from people that they know, trust, and like. Anyway, tons of stuff in there that's going to tremendously impact your leadership and help people in your company to be better leaders as well. So go buy a copy for every single person in your business. When you do that, you'll see an immediate return on investment when they read and apply what they learn. All right, back to my interview. So if a construction company decides an 831B doesn't work for them any longer and they want to unwind it or exit it, what are some of the challenges involved with that? Because obviously going in, everything's all awesome. You buy into it and everything like that, but then you get to a point where this is not for me anymore. What do I do?
Yeah, it's a great, I mean, we have at least 10% of our clients every year do that. And that's either because a sole partnership split, the big 3Ds, the death, disability, and divorce happen, right?
Yeah.
In the operating companies are, right? So from our perspective, we make it very simple. It's a $3,000 closing fee, and it really pays the final tax returns.
Right.
Of C Corp. And it's divvying it out. So you're a shareholder of the company, or your operating company is a shareholder of the company. We see, we're dealing with a lot of merger acquisitions right now where we see clients take on a lot, even when they sell their construction company, they're still retaining a lot of risk on the books. Either they are carrying the no on behalf of the business owner, the new business owner, or they're taking on warranty risk. A lot of times what we see in construction world is they get devalued when they go to sell because of the warranties they have sitting out there. So either you prepare for that, you build an 831B, you fund for that, or you fund at closing that says, hey, if a warranty happens, you're going to use these dollars. I'm going to get my price and I'm going to make it be a lot more attractive because you have another bucket of money out here to handle my warranties. You know your warranties. You've been running your company for a long time. And so, new owners will look at it, look really scary. Of course, their guy on their side is going to try to devalue your company because of that. But I bring it in on the asset side where it's a value that, hey, we've got money sitting over here in the event of.
So that's interesting. So that's a potential strategy then when you're thinking about selling your business or exiting the business, is to set up an 831B as a way of enhancing the value of the business to a prospective buyer.
Absolutely. I mean, a new buyer knowing, hey, they got that warranty funded and I'm not assuming that risk from day one is huge.
Yeah, it's interesting. Can you give examples of construction-related risks that an 831B can cover, which may not be available through traditional insurance channels?
Yeah, you bet. I think one of the big ones we look at all the time is your professional liability. They're putting a lot of endorsements on general liability because, it doesn't matter what construction you're in, you're consulting.
Yeah, right.
A lot of times you got to be very careful whether your general liability is going to trigger coverage for you on that. A lot of times they'll exclude it. So professional liability, make sure you got on that. I can go on and on about, I know certain situations that construction defects is a big one.
Yep.
A lot of states after 2008 passed legislation that you're on the hook between 6 and 10 years, depending on the state you're working in and the construction work you're on. So you as a GC, you're responsible for not only the workmanship, but also the product you put in that building.
Right.
Or on that road or whatever you did, right? The bridge work, whatever you're doing as a professional in a construction business, you're on the hook for that. Where's that going to fund from? And that's where you see the devaluation a lot of times coming in on selling because they're talking about construction defect.
Right.
And you will get sued if you've been in business long enough in the construction world, you've been sued.
Right.
And a lot of times you got to worry about that. So we see a lot of dispute resolutions going out there where the general liability is not covering you there's a lot of right to defend clauses in your policies. But unfortunately, and I read a lot of periodicals when it comes to what's going on in the claim world right now.
Right.
And insurance companies are getting off those claims. Now you're on the hook for your own legal bills. Where's that money going to come from? Right. And so, those are big ones that we see in our world is dispute resolutions, political risk, dealing with cities, dealing with municipalities. One of the things we get a question of all the time is the bonding. Does this affect my bond? I'm going to show show more expenses in my operating company. Is this going to hurt my bond? And quite honestly, bond companies are sophisticated. These are underwriting a loan essentially, right? I mean, that's how it works. And they love these products. They know you're a little bit more sophisticated in business owner. You get it. You're smarter. You're not spending every dollar you make because why? Because this is really a forced savings account now. Business owners have never had an incentive to save money. They've got all the incentive in the world, like we said earlier, about spending money. This is about saving money. And to me, you honestly, as a bond talking with bond companies, you make yourself a better risk for the bond companies. And this is the backdrop to that. Let's say you do have a bond exposure. We can write a excess or make it first dollar risk under the bond, under this product as well. And so that's a big thing for construction companies. Obviously, they live and die based on their ability to bond.
Let me ask you this then. So let's say I put the right amount of money into my 831B. I'm not trying to game it. I'm just doing the right thing. I don't have claims. Is there any investment benefit that I get? If I'm parking my cash here, what do I get as a result of that? Because I know that's one of the things that's attractive about captives is you get the money back, et cetera, et cetera. How does that work with the 831B?
Yeah. So you signed an investment agreement, which you can and can't do with the money. And really, it's self-directed. We push all the money back into the clients under the name of that entity, the C Corp's entity and a bank account. Their own financial advisor can manage the money as long as they adhere to our investment agreement that we have between them and us. So, again, these are successful people. They know how to manage the money best. We don't retain that in some kind of pool. We push there's some fees involved, obviously, but once we push all that money into them, it's being managed by them. And absolutely, we call it a reserve or surplus. Reserves that money at risk in any given year under the policies you currently have in place. Once those policies expire, it becomes surplus. We expect that money to be managed, not just sit in a money market account. You can do laddered CDs. You can do the normal bond, ballot, mutual funds, EFT, all that good stuff. We don't ask for illiquid investments. Obviously, we don't what you build in your reserves or surplus in illiquid investments. And quite honestly, these do become lendable dollars down the road to shareholders. And that's something also, too, we see a lot of business owners use it as a supplement to their operating lines. And, when things happen, that they're able to build, turn to this as a form of an operating line versus trying to go down to a bank and get it something underwritten through a loan or something like goes on in the world out there. So there's a lot of advantages to this.
So hold on a second. So I can tap that if I need a line of credit then?
Yeah, provided you have enough surplus and you've been doing it for couple of years, absolutely.
Okay, so if it's been set up right and if it's been funded correctly, then that pool of money it sounds like it's tremendously flexible then. It's not just for yeah, I get that. That's pretty good.
And, truthfully, Eric, this is something that's done all over the country,
Yeah.
all over the world. This is what big companies do. And what we're trying to do, and man, there are some big companies out there, big construction companies out there, still not even aware of macrocaptives yet.
Right.
That's shocking.
Yeah, it's true.
And they're paying a lot of money in premiums. When it comes to that situation, if I put $1 to the traditional insurance company, 40 cents of that is just going towards operations.
Yeah.
Between the agent,
Yep.
Keeping the names on their buildings, right? At least 60 cents, that's really where the macrocaptive is. So if you're paying $1 million, you can save $400,000 a year, typically in those situations.
Right.
So again, if you're not even aware of those types of things, you really need to look at that. And we do a really good job. I have a whole nother company and a whole nother team that does that. We work with a lot of great reinsurance carriers. And then we come in under the 831B and we supplement into that as well. It's like, hey, you got first dollar risk under your macrocaptive for the first $250,000 a year of property damage. Where's that money going to come from? Let's just fund a little bit at a time. So God forbid, if it does happen in the next 3 to 5 years, you're not turning to this year's profits to rely on it to make sure you can survive. You're turning on to the last several years' profits that you've put in place. And it's a much more effective and efficient way of running your company.
So which companies are not a good fit for the 831B? Like when you start talking to a company and they're like, Van, we'd like to work with you. And you're like, red flag, sure. It's not going to happen.
It really depends on the attitude of the owners. I mean, if they're in the buy and spend mode, meaning they want the new boat, the new cars, the new house, all that kind of stuff, it's just not our client. I mean, realistically, and we don't see that a lot, honestly. Our typical clients, people in their 50s, very successful, family-run businesses, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And a little bit conservative in nature. They know their business and they've done very well in life. And now they're just trying to look, okay, how do we mitigate some of this risk? I've taken risks my whole life. How do I start to mitigate it?
Yeah.
And we fit in pretty good with those types of clients. But, if you're in the buy and spend mode and you're aggressively trying to grow your company to where you put every dollar back into your company,
right,
which I can appreciate, that we're probably not a good fit for you.
Okay.
Honestly.
So what are some alternative risk management strategies then that you'd recommend if an 831B is not a good fit?
I think today's world with insurances, the way they are, you got to put yourself in a bigger first dollar loss, I should say.
Yeah.
You're going to have to offset your premiums. I think that's one of the things that's probably concerning. And more importantly is, if it's not a substantial claim today, you got to really wonder whether you should turn it in. Because honestly, it's going to hurt it hurts your program. It hurts you from the standpoint, am I going to be non-renewed?
Right.
Or am I going to be put out to the surplus markets where I'm going to pay a lot more money in premium? And I have just better off paying that claim myself. And this is where you got to have an agent that really knows what they're doing. And there are some really good property and casualty agents out there. Unfortunately, there's some that are just not.
Right.
And they're not bringing you new ideas. They're just bringing you a renewal and saying, hey, you got a rate increase this year. And oh, by the way, you're not going to be covered for mold anymore. And here's why. You know what I mean? So there's just a lot of things out there. And I think, again, this is being proactive. You got to be an advocate for you. You got to be an advocate for your company.
Yep.
You got to be, and it's one of those things where you got to work on it and not in it. We as business owners are busy all the time, and we get into the minutia of business, right? But these are one of these tools that you really got to take a step back and say, okay, what am I missing? And quite honestly, I've seen it. If you're doing our type of program and you're doing a macrocaptive with an 831B plan, it puts you in such a better competitive edge over your competitors like nobody else's business.
Right.
Especially in competitive bid markets like we are today.
Yeah. When you're looking at an 831B, let's say I'm sure you've probably done this before where someone set one up and then you come and take a look at it and it's been done sloppily or it's just been done ineffectively. What are some of those sloppy, ineffective things that cause you to say, man, this is not done right?
I have two big red flags. Is there's not a defined claims process. So meaning this, that if you don't know how to file a claim or there's not a defined claims process, you got to be worried about that.
Right.
The other one is if you haven't paid claims that are unaffiliated to you. Like if you participate in pools, and by the way, we're happy. We got videos on our website, 831b.com. If people need to understand that, or they can reach out to us through that too. But they really need to understand that there's got to be a distribution of risk. That's going to be the first thing the IRS is going to attack.
Right.
And they've been very successful at it. I mean, they're cherry picking cases, obviously, that they obviously had bad facts in, and it was done for estate tax planning versus risk management. That's why in the cases that have come out in the last several years, that's basically what was motivating. This was back in, a lot of these cases were 10, 12 years ago when they first started. Now they're just now coming out of court. But so those are big ones, I think. And we asked, the first thing we ask is like, hey, what claims are you paid that are out your own? And where's your defined risk claims process? And the reason why that's important is because if you don't have that and you're told you're in a pool, we as an administrator, we have a fiduciary to the pools,
right?
Meaning we can't just cover a claim to cover a claim. There's got to be a process to it.
Right.
Without it, our clients, our 800 some odd clients wouldn't appreciate us covering claims that they're having to participate in that weren't warranted or legitimate claims. Of course. And so that is probably the biggest red flag to me is what's your claims process? Because if you don't have one, then you got to wonder, first off, am I in a pool then? And are you guys covering claims? How do I know you guys are covering claims I should be participating in?
So it's interesting for you, on the one hand, it's funny, you got to look at that analogy about looking after your own health. On the one hand, you've got to look after your own health then by weeding out the leaky people. But then on the other hand, when someone's pursuing something like an 831B or thinking about it, they've got to be thinking about the folks that they're doing business with and weeding out the leaky companies that may not be set up right and may not do things right so that they attract the IRS's attention.
100%. And like I said, if they're selling the tax code first or trying to tell you, say, hey, we're going to put a life insurance in, we don't allow life insurance beyond in these things.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's another big sales pitch, and
why don't you allow life insurance? I'm just curious.
You're using tax-deferred dollars to fund a tax vehicle that doesn't get taxed. If you want the IRS to come and get you, just keep telling everybody it's tax-free. We say it's tax-deferred. Eventually, you're going to pay capital gains on these dollars,
right?
Or taxes. This is not tax-free,
right?
It's no different than the 401k, right? That's why we compare the 401k a lot with the 831B. It's a tax deferral program that mitigates your risk while you're operating a company that's real. It's, it's got to look around, and that's got to be, and you bring up a great point. I mean, it comes down to motivation,
right?
And if your plan administrators out there promoting you and they're trying to sell you life insurance, I don't know. I just feels like those are red flags to me. I mean, what is their motivation to want to do this? We're here building a company based on risk management strategies. You look at any of our marketing materials in our periodicals, anything that we write, and we write a lot of articles out there, a lot of op-eds.
Mm-hmm.
Risk is first with tax advantages. That's what the code was written for. The code was written in 86, really for crop insurance. Farmers are signing themselves self-insuring crop insurance.
Yep.
We're with a lot of clients today with crop insurance today because there's so many, they don't cover infestation anymore. They don't, they have huge first dollar loss. A lot of times it's 40% of the value of the crop.
Yep.
We're dealing with a ton of different companies out there. Cement companies today, cement trucks now, just on commercial general liability. They're all typically on the first 50,000 to 100. We've seen some with $250,000. So if a cement truck runs into a car, the operating company's on the hook for the first $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 now.
Yeah.
Big fund and a lot of unfunded liabilities on their books, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's interesting. This is great conversation. So just, Van, tell us a little bit more about your business and how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so we're 831b.com is the best way to get that. Mine is van at 831b.com.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to reach out via email, I've got a great sales team here internally. We also have about 150 representatives around the country who represent our products along with wholesalers. And, we're like I said, we're driving this to make a normal business practice, not out of the taxes. Taxes are an incentive, obviously. That's why Congress passed that code back in 1986, almost 38 years ago. No, 38 years ago. Yeah. But at the same time, though, you owe it to yourself as a business owner. You've taken a ton of risk it's not easy taking an idea, running with it and turn it into a profitable company. Now, how do you maximize that? You've taken risk. Now, how do I mitigate that? And how do you keep what you've done?
Right.
At 831Bs. And by the way, it's just another toolbox. It's absolutely not a silver bullet and by no means, but for the right client, it's a great tool.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you breaking it down for us, Van. I appreciate also you not presenting a magic pill to us and giving us some, just another alternative for people to consider. And really thank you for coming on the podcast here today.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to educate always.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to my discussion with Van today. And again, 831B may not be a fit for you, but it could be. And if you're interested in reaching out to him, Check out the links in the show notes. Go to his website, 831b.com. Thanks for listening to the episode today, and feel free to give us a review and rating wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll catch you on the next episode.